What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical average American here today to react and continue to learn about what if the United Kingdom broke up. Um, all I learned from last time when we started this in part one is what I thought was an entirely hypothetical, kind of fun scenario to think about is far more possible than I ever imagined. I know it's not like happening, and possible is a relative term, and I don't want to go out on a stretch here, but Scotland has voted before on becoming independent. I never knew that. Northern Ireland has taken polls on whether they'd like to become one unified Ireland, and it's not as people aren't as like troubled or against it as I ever imagined. Like at least 42% when the poll was taken of Northern Ireland inhabitants are kind of okay with it. And the whole situation is just fascinating to me, but even more fascinating that this is kind of a discussion that has happened or is happening. Again, I don't know how realistic it actually is, but it's fun for me to learn about and think about. So, with that being said, I'm pretty interested in continuing this video here on what if the UK broke up. And now that we've established it's not impossible, well, I think what's left is learning a bit about the logistics of each country being like fully independent and what that might mean for them and that kind of thing, which sounds also fascinating. So, let us continue.
United, the UK has a total area of around 242,000 square kilometers, the world's 78th largest country. How would it be divided in the case of separation? Once
78th largest in the world as the UK altogether. As an American, I'm used to having a big old slab of country to really wander about. No, I don't. True, but I don't find myself wandering about it that frequently. Whereas if the UK were to split, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, England would be pretty small independently, which last time they were talking about the populations and now we're talking about the size of the countries. I don't think that's a bad thing, being small. I think it's actually kind of nice.
again, England makes up the majority of this, with 130,000 square kilometers, 54% of the UK's European land. Scotland comes second with 32%, Wales at 9%, and Northern Ireland last with only 6% of the territory. England would still be within the top 100 biggest countries at number 95, just behind Greece. Scotland only at 115, ahead of Czechia but behind Austria.
England would actually still be in the top 100 for size. That's interesting. England's just a big place. Bigger than I ever truly appreciated.
Wales at 148, between El Salvador and Belize, and Northern Ireland at 156, behind East Timor. The border of Northern Ireland with the Irish Republic would likely remain open, further contributing to unification, but it's likely that free movement of people and goods would also be a reality within Great Britain.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? I don't know the full ramifications of the UK just splitting up forever, but I imagine it's so symbiotic at this point, having been together for a very long time as the United Kingdom. Even if this happened, and I don't know why this would happen necessarily, but if it did, you imagine the relationship between all the countries would still exist, probably be pretty substantial, with people still wanting to move in and out, perhaps relatives and friends from the neighboring countries, and trade and all of that would still continue. It's not like that would just stop.
Additionally, there is the issue of other overseas territories that the British have today. Which of the countries would keep control over them? I think proximity makes sense for this, so the Channel Islands would necessarily remain dependencies of an independent England. But what about those in the Caribbean, Africa, or Asia?
Are we talking about countries that are part of the Commonwealth, or technically still like under the umbrella of the United Kingdom? So if the UK split up, who would technically like still be over them or something. I don't want to say in control of them, but maybe like or part of their government, or I guess I'm not exactly sure how it works currently.
Would this separation be a chance for them to lose a few of them? I'm sure, for instance, Argentina would see it as a possibility to once again attempt to conquer or occupy the Malvinas/Falkland Islands, and others across the world might go through similar issues of local and neighboring countries wanting to take them over. Gibraltar is, as it is, a complicated issue. Would UK dissolution lead to it remaining English, or finally cave and join Spain? They could also become independent, as could the Isle of Man and other small overseas territories of the British, leading.
Man, there's a lot of little British places around the world that I thought I knew about a little bit, but we're talking about a lot of places that I had no clue were still a part of that. And yeah, breaking up of the UK would affect all of them in very, very interesting ways. This is something I've never even thought about.
Not to 4 new countries, but 5, 6, or even more of them. Gibraltar and the Isle of Man already have their own cool-looking flags, but many others like Bermuda don't. And so, in the case of independence for these smaller islands, new flags might also be needed. And what about the economy? The British GDP was 2.8 trillion in 2019. They are the world's 5th largest economy, but the distribution per country is, again, very different.
Yeah. British GDP, British economy. One of the most powerful in the world, one of the biggest, most important economies in the world. Splitting that up would be substantial. It would affect the entire planet and the global economy in a way. That'd be very interesting. Man, that, like I was saying in the previous part 1, breaking up of the UK would, finally be very much like newsworthy and talked about immensely in America as well. I was complaining earlier that not enough British news from the UK and events and stuff gets talked about in America, so I feel like I don't know what's going on half the time in detail. So yes, this would definitely make the front page.
England accounts for most of it, with London alone being a key part of their economy. I guess that's why there are even some people who have the crazy idea of London becoming its own independent city-state, sort of like what Vatican is to Italy, but for companies instead of the church, I guess. Out of those 2.8 trillion, 2.4 were generated through and in England.
Yeah, London is obviously like an enormous part of that. I have watched videos strictly on London and how critical it is as like a global economic just one place that has a lot of purpose and importance for all that, and one of the biggest tourist destinations on the planet, obviously synonymous with England for most Americans is London, but becoming its own sovereign city-state, that's interesting. I don't know why that would be necessary.
Although if you exclude London, that number falls to 1.7 trillion. However, still very much ahead of Scotland at 200 billion, Wales at 100 billion, and Northern Ireland at 50 billion. London alone surpasses the other 3 combined, with their 700 billion contribution to the UK's GDP at 2.
Wow, the economy of London alone is bigger than Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland combined.
0.4 trillion, England would drop from the UK's 5th place to that of the 7th global economy, then behind India and France. Scotland would go down to number 50, just behind Portugal, Wales further down between Kenya and Ethiopia, and Northern Ireland would roughly match Panama's economy size. This next graphic's information is from 2012, so almost a decade outdated, from the British Office for National Statistics, but it's still interesting to look at.
Why aren't we updating our stats here? Why are we forced to look at statistics that are over a decade old? Oh well, it's what we got.
Because despite things probably having changed in the past 10 years, general tendencies might not be too far off. It shows us how each English region compares along with the 3 other countries of the Union. We notice that England is responsible for 80% worth of the economy, Scotland for 8%, Wales for 4%, and Northern Ireland for 2%. Although this only adds up to 94, so I don't know where the other 6 are. The point is, even assuming England's position is partly due to working together with the other countries, even if they they were exploiting their resources and concentrating all industry, production, exports, and service providing in England. Their economy is largely bigger, and at the moment of a breakup would be the biggest. Obviously that without the resources of the three countries and with the three establishing their own individual separate economies, England would likely fall in benefit of the other three. So,
this is getting pretty detailed, to be honest. A lot more detailed than I ever expected. It just makes me wonder if, because of all these economic reasons, is this enough of a reason for basically all of these countries to say, there's not enough good reason for the UK to break up? Because the UK as a whole is extraordinarily successful in my eyes, like in many, many ways. So, I don't know, it's interesting. It's tough for me to think about because I'm not living it. So I don't exactly understand, like, the mindset of your average English person, Scottish individual, someone from Wales or Northern Ireland, what they think about being part of the UK. But just purely from a monetary standpoint, it feels like breaking up would hurt it.
So far, in population, territory, and economic terms, England would retain much of what the UK already has. Now, obviously, I think at least immediately, there would be a very big drop from no longer working together, and each of the countries might lose significant amounts in their GDP, especially because all the new countries might have new expenses that the central UK government now covers. Only 16% of Scottish exports are to the EU, while 63% to the UK. If these UK
Yeah, I mean, right? You would think a lot of the trade is within the UK, a lot. And yeah, I'm just wondering if any of this really makes sense, or is there a clear-cut benefit to everyone for the UK to break up? Is there really a clear benefit?
UK-destined exports were at risk, their economy would suffer a lot. But I think in the long term, Scotland would likely begin improving and doing better. There is also the issue of currency. Would all of them keep the British pound or come up with Scottish, Welsh, and Irish pounds? Northern Ireland unifying and Scotland joining the EU could mean they also join the Eurozone and begin using the euro. But unless all of them continue to use the British pound, which in this scenario I would find unlikely, the value of the currency would most likely drop, even if then rising again or even more in the future. And finally,
Yeah, it would just actually make trade and some certain things more difficult between the four countries if the UK broke up, because they'd start having their own governments, which, you know, could be a great thing for each country to have their own, like, official governments that are their own and be under no one else. But also things like trade laws, little things like that, and using different currencies might just be kind of annoying.
of the biggest issues in any country separation, the military. How would they divide military forces and resources? According to this document from 2014, the UK have around 156,000 active military personnel. Of these, 125,000 are provided by England, around 10,000 by Scotland, and just over 2,000 by Wales and Northern Ireland each. In this map, we can see that, although this includes civilian personnel and the armed forces too. The darker the color, the more that region contributes to the armed forces staff, while Scotland
So the armed forces is essentially England. If we go back up a little bit, can we? 125,000 soldiers from England out of 140,000. Yeah, it's a lot. Oh, somehow I turned the sound off.
has a large lead over the rest. And so, in the event of a separation, having the most land, the most people, and the biggest economy, it makes sense that the most of the military resources would remain theirs, while Scotland and Wales having to somewhat build their militaries from scratch. Northern Ireland's almost absence of armed forces would be another step towards unification with the Republic of Ireland.
I was just about to say, that's just another reason to unify with Ireland, right? Be one Ireland? It might as well be one Ireland. It would make a lot of Americans happy, because, like I said, a lot of Americans don't even know that Ireland is not unified, as embarrassing as that is.
With the potential loss or independence of the British overseas territories, the last remnants of the once gigantic British Empire would effectively be in danger and possibly disappear forever. The United Kingdom's role as a major country in international politics might also come to an end, damaging their seat at the table. I mean, who would occupy the UK's permanent seat on the UN Security Council? My logic would dictate England has the biggest chance, but would they be able to justify their presence without the existence of the UK as a whole?
Wow, that's fascinating. So, a lot of this presentation is saying, like, well, England is the largest at this point, and so if the UK were to break up, England would maintain, like, the vast majority of a lot of things. But on the global stage, it's not just that Wales or Northern Ireland or Scotland benefits from being part of the UK, being part of England, or partnered with England, however you want to say it. England gains a ton from being part of the UK as well.
Economies we saw before separating would bring their economic power significantly down. And even if England, or perhaps eventually Scotland, maintained their presence in the G20 or G7 groups, their power and influence would decrease, as their economy would be much smaller as well. So, that is a short overview of what could happen if the United Kingdom broke apart, separating itself into 4 or 5 or more independent separate countries. England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, or a united Ireland, and perhaps even the small Isle of Man or Gibraltar as small states in the style of Monaco or Andorra. How these new countries would compare to each other when separate, economically, politically, in terms of population and other factors, the fate of their territory, and how they would do on an international level. Like I said, I don't think this scenario is impossible. I think
not impossible. Yeah, also, this just making me think, from an American point of view, Americans don't even really know who is technically in the UK, as silly as that sounds, like I was saying before. Like, a lot of Americans don't know Wales is in the UK, or Northern Ireland, and maybe not even Scotland, and a lot of Americans think England is the UK, or England is Britain. They're the same thing, and no one really understands the difference here. But it's funny, because if the UK were to break up, for Americans, a lot of them might not even understand what that means or what's happening, and some might even be like, what? England and Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland are separating. Aren't they already separate? When were they together? So it's actually kind of funny for me to think about, like, the general American reaction to this. Very interesting.
There is some likelihood of it happening, but only in parts. Irish unification seems inevitable in the future, and Scottish independence seems to be very possible. But I think at least England and Wales would remain together even in those scenarios. Would these separations be good for those who leave and those who stay? I honestly don't know. So make sure to leave your opinions below. Would you like to see this happen or not? And what do you think the results would be? Thanks so much for watching this video.
Wow. Yeah, I would like to see some of the comments, actually. Some opinions on this, some hot takes. Oh, by the way, this video is by General Knowledge, and I give it a like. That was fantastic. Fantastically made. Much more information than I ever imagined. Fascinating stuff. Good statistics. Explained it to someone like me who really has no understanding of a lot of this stuff as a baseline. So this was great. I thought this was great. If we go down to the comments, if we dare to check out some comments, and we do, let's see here. Then people calling the UK England would finally be right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. If the UK survives to the end of this century intact, I will raise from the dead and play the banjo at the Royal Variety Performance. Okay, we will look forward to that. Would Wales passports have dragons if they were independent? I hope so. I hope so. These are interesting comments. This is the really important stuff right here. Not if, but when. 5 to 10 years, Scotland will lead the way. Okay, that's a prediction. That's one man's prediction. As a Scottish person, this was an interesting video. Also makes my skin crawl when people pronounce it Edinburgh. Sorry. Okay. I very much doubt Northern Ireland would go independent. The choice would be to stay with us or join the Republic of Ireland. Right, join the Republic of Ireland. That's definitely a possibility, it seems. Irish unity on its way. Okay, okay. Some pro-Irish unity here. Great video. Just to clarify, the Isle of Man is already mostly independent. It's a crown democracy, not part of the UK. Oh, well, I don't know anything about the Isle of Man, so I will take your word for it. Oh, anything else here? While it's mostly not recognized as its own country, many residents of the Isle of Man consider it to not be part of the UK. I'm gonna have to watch a video just on the Isle of Man so I understand the Isle of Man. I have no idea what we're talking about. What do we got here? Firstly, if Scotland and Wales join the EU, that would mean hard external EU borders between those countries and England. Yeah. This would have an impact on their markets in England. Yes, a lot of this sounds like it would have impact on the trade between the four nations, honestly. I don't really want this to happen, but I fear it is inevitable. See, that's the kind of thing I wonder about. What the average UK individual thinks about this? If this is discussed in the modern day, right now, I know it's been discussed in the past, but when does this become like a hot topic? Like, are people bringing this up randomly? It's like in the United States, we're basically never actually discussing, oh, maybe our state should be independent and we should all be 50 independent nations. Like, that's almost a joke, to be honest, and rarely the topic of conversation, so that's all I have to go on. I wonder if that's relatable at all to the UK? Huh. Even if Scotland left and Northern Ireland joined with the Republic of Ireland, which I believe to be likely, it certainly would be the end of an era and an important part of history. Yeah, it would. It'd be weird. I guess it'd be interesting. I'm not saying that's a good reason for it to happen just because it's interesting, but as an American who doesn't have a humongous stake in the whole thing, I would be looking on with extraordinary interest, I'll say that. Wow, it would be the end of an era, huh? This is so interesting. I am very pleased with this video and what I have learned. Fascinating stuff. What if the UK broke up? I saw that video title and I was like, what if they did break up? What does that even... Is that possible? What does that mean? So I'm happy with learning about it. I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK, United Kingdom culture, stuff about the UK that I've never learned before or have never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.